The same hunger. Jordan, yes.
Michael Jordan always trying to improve his shot position, the ability to put it on the floor.
High fly ball, center field, well struck. PCA back, some more and it's gone.
It wasn't there, so now he's got to throw it deep to the end zone.
What a play by McDavid to set up Connor Brown.
It's the creativity on the left, and it's Bukayo Saka who...
The McLarens collide! Lando Norris into the wall and out of the race!
No one in the history of the sport has hit more threes in a season than Clark has this year.
And with that, beats none other than Steph Curry, arguably the greatest shooter of all time in the men's or women's game.
The sounds are the universal language of sporting greatness. The squeak of a meticulous hardwood pivot, a legacy of Michael Jordan's relentless pursuit of the perfect shot, the resonant crack of a baseball, launched from a hitter's box, arcing into the bleachers, the spiraling perfection of a football, thrown into a crowd, finding one pair of miraculous hands, the screech of Formula One tires, the heart-stopping silence of a collision, a championship ending against a concrete wall, and now a new sound is etching itself into that canon. The clean, swift swish of a basketball from 30 feet and beyond. A sound that has broken a record once thought to be the exclusive domain of a revolutionary Steph Curry. But this record wasn't broken in a packed NBA arena. It was set in Iowa by Caitlin Clark. It is a sound that isn't just scoring points. It is shattering perceptions, compressing timelines, and announcing, unequivocally, that a new era has not just arrived, it has crashed the gates. Every sports league, from the titanic NFL to the burgeoning MLS, speaks of growth as its holy grail. It is the ultimate metric, the vindication of every gamble and investment. More fans in the seats, higher ratings on the screen, a louder, more persistent buzz in the cultural conversation. We chart this growth on graphs, celebrate it in press releases, and point to it as proof of concept. It is the finish line we are always running toward. But nobody truly talks about what happens in the immediate, breathless after.
Don't get it twisted. Don't get it. Caitlin Clark is the reason why a lot of great things is going to happen for the WNBA.
Aftermath of crossing that line. Nobody prepares you for the day when the graphs turn steep, when the buzz becomes a roar, and the finish line reveals itself to be, in fact, the starting line of something far more complex and demanding. Because growth is not the victory lap. Growth is not the reward. Growth is the moment the pressure truly shows up. It is the precise instant when systems, relationships, and infrastructures that function perfectly adequately in a smaller, quieter world are shoved onto a main stage they were never engineered to support. It's when the carefully plotted 5-year plan is rendered obsolete in 5 weeks. It's when the nice to have becomes the must have, and the someday conversation becomes the right now emergency. This is the exact coordinates where the WNBA finds itself standing today. From the outside, the view is nothing short of spectacular. Ratings are not just climbing, they are scaling cliffs. Tickets for certain matchups are not merely selling.
And at guard, from Iowa, wearing number 22, Caitlin Clark.
They are becoming coveted, scarce cultural commodities, with prices on the secondary market mirroring those of established men's leagues. Media companies that once allocated coverage out of a sense of dutiful obligation now clamor for access, for exclusives, for a piece of the heat. To the external observer, it looks like pure, unadulterated momentum. It looks like the culmination of a decades-long struggle, finally paying off. It looks, for all the world, like success. But inside the league, from the league office to the team front offices, from the coaching staffs to the player lounges, the sensation is profoundly different. It feels less like a parade and more like being strapped to the nose cone of a rocket that has ignited prematurely. It is the visceral feeling of acceleration without a corresponding
How monumental is the Caitlin Clark effect? Clark will make her regular season WNBA debut on Tuesday when the Indiana Fever take on the Connecticut Sun, and as expected, the game is already sold out. Ticket prices have skyrocketed. Courtside seats for this game are reselling for over $2,000 each. As for the rest of the league, the Las Vegas Aces and Washington Mystics have already moved to bigger venues to accommodate for the demand when Caitlin Clark comes to town. The Indiana Fever have also become the most followed WNBA team on Instagram. The Caitlin Clark effect is real.
Adjustment in control. It is the disorienting reality of expectations inflating overnight, while the underlying structures, the scheduling, the travel, the marketing bandwidth, the economic framework chase desperately behind, gasping for air. Success, in the form of blinding attention, has arrived early, but organization, the meticulous scaffolding required to sustain that success, is running late. The spotlight has flipped on before every actor in the play has found their mark, learned their lines, or understood the scale of the new theater. This is the critical, unglamorous, and often chaotic stage where leagues stop dreaming abstractly about growth and start dealing concretely with the immense, unrelenting weight of relevance. When a league exists in a smaller ecosystem, mistakes have room to breathe. A logistical foul-up, a public relations misstep, an uneven broadcast, they ripple briefly and then fade. The audience is smaller, more forgiving, often more invested in the league's mere survival than its flawless execution. The margins for error are wide. When a league grows, those margins evaporate. Mistakes are no longer absorbed. They are amplified. They are captured in high definition, clipped for social media, dissected on talk shows, and framed as symbolic of larger issues. And when a league vaults into the realm of true, mainstream visibility, as the WNBA has every flaw, every seam, every compromise of a previous era is examined under a microscope, whether the institution is ready for that scrutiny or not, this scrutiny isn't necessarily malicious. It is a function of scale. The WNBA has decisively moved into a new lane. It is no longer broadly perceived as a niche concern, a side project of the NBA, or a well-intentioned experiment. It is now being measured, analyzed, and critiqued as a real major professional sports league. This comes with a set of assumed standards of production, of accessibility, of competitive balance, of star promotion, of business acuity. This reclassification is, in itself, a form of profound progress. It is the recognition that was fought for over 28 seasons, but progress has mass. It has gravity, and it brings with it a new kind of pressure. For years, the league's paramount fight was for attention, against the summer sports calendar, against cultural indifference, against limited media real estate. Now, attention is not the problem. The problem is managing that attention, stewarding it, and building something consistent and reliable beneath it. When fans start tuning in, not as an occasional act of support, but as a regular habit, they don't quietly drift away if the experience is lacking. They become vocal in their critique. When broadcast partners invest real money and prime windows, they expect a polished product and cooperative partners. When corporate sponsors see long-term upside, they demand a stable, professional, and predictable environment for their investment. Growth, therefore, doesn't just unlock doors. It systematically removes escape routes. There is no retreating to obscurity. The league hasn't just gained viewers. It has implicitly taken on a covenant of responsibility. And in the trajectory of any burgeoning enterprise, responsibility always shows up before comfort does. The conversation is inevitable, and it often centers on one name. Don't get it twisted. Voices will say, a necessary preamble to a complex truth. Caitlin Clark is the reason why a lot of great things is going to happen for the WNBA. The statement is both accurate and incomplete. Caitlin Clark did not invent this moment for the WNBA. The foundation was laid by the pioneers of the late 90 seconds. It was reinforced by the sustained excellence of Diana Taurasi, Sue Bird, and Sylvia Fowles. It was electrified by the rivalries of Breanna Stewart and Aja Wilson, by the dynastic poise of the Las Vegas Aces, the league's competitive depth, its style of play, its veteran stars. They built the house. What Caitlin Clark did was not construction. It was acceleration. She is a force of catalytic compression. She took a trajectory of growth that might have unfolded steadily over the next 5 to 7 years and compressed it into a single, seismic off-season. She did this not through manufactured controversy or tabloid fame, but through a paradigm-shifting style of play that generated a sustained national fascination that simply refused to fade. The deep logo threes, the audacious passing, the undeniable production it created, a gravitational pull that drew in casual and non-traditional sports fans. The effect was transformative. Once her final collegiate season began, WNBA discourse stopped being periodic. Games featuring Iowa, and by proxy, discussions about her future league, stopped feeling optional for sports media. They became essential, water-cooler, must-watch events. The conversation no longer turned on for the playoffs and off after the championship. It became a constant, humming background noise that grew steadily louder. Coverage didn't have to be painstakingly pitched anymore. It became an assumed part of the sports calendar. This is the critical pivot point, when interest stops merely boosting statistics and starts fundamentally changing habits. When fans who once might have checked the WNBA standings in October start marking fever games on their May calendars in March. When sports bars that never previously considered showing a regular season game now promote Caitlin Clark watch parties. When behavior shifts at this level, the systems supporting that behavior no longer have a choice. They must adapt in real time. And adaptation under a blinding spotlight is a recipe for visible strain. This is where a particular confusion begins to creep into the public narrative. Observers see the wildly uneven distribution of attention. The sold-out arenas in Indianapolis, Washington, and Las Vegas for fever games, contrasted with quieter crowds elsewhere. The national focus on a rookie amid a league of accomplished veterans, and they often leap to a narrative of deliberate favoritism. They assume this focus is a product of league office mandate, a top-down decision to anoint one player at the expense of others. In reality, this visibility was not selected from a menu of options. It was answered. The league, its broadcast partners, and the media are largely reacting to a market signal of unprecedented strength. The demand for Clark-related content is a measurable fact in ticket prices, TV ratings, and social metrics. Responding to that demand is not an emotional choice. It is a commercial and editorial one. What is happening is not primarily personal. It is structural. A system built to promote a league is now grappling with a phenomenon that threatens to eclipse the league's traditional promotional levers. The numbers tell a stark story. Clark's regular season debut was a sellout before she'd played a minute, with courtside seats commanding prices reminiscent of an NBA Finals. Teams like the Las Vegas Aces and Washington Mystics, organizations with championship pedigrees and their own superstars, are moving games to larger venues specifically when the Fever come to town to capture the unprecedented demand. The Indiana Fever's social media following has skyrocketed, making them the most followed team in the league almost overnight. The Caitlin Clark effect is not media hyperbole. It is an economic and cultural datum. No league, no institution is adequately prepared for sudden, vertical acceleration. Strategic planning, by its nature, is built on pillars of control, predictability, and incremental progress. True acceleration, the viral, non-linear kind, shatters all three pillars simultaneously. Every organization, in its heart of hearts, believes it will handle explosive growth more gracefully than its predecessors. It studies the past and thinks, we'll be smarter, we'll be more prepared, we'll communicate better. History offers a sobering counter-narrative. The NBA of the 1980s did not seamlessly transition into the Jordan-fueled global juggernaut of the 90 seconds. It grappled with drug scandals, perceptions of racial bias, and internal strife before finding its footing. The NFL's ascent to financial dominance was not a smooth curve. It was marked by labor wars, existential safety crises, and constant tension between owners and players. Global soccer, in the age of oligarch-owned clubs and nation-state investment, is a daily testament to how massive capital influx creates as much turbulence as it does glamour. The pattern is universal. Growth always hits first. Stability comes later, if it comes at all. That messy, uncomfortable public phase of strain is not evidence of a collapse. It is the inevitable process, playing out in real time. The seams show because the garment is being stretched beyond its original design. Therefore, managing growth does not mean slamming on the brakes or attempting to shrink a moment that has taken decades to create. That is both impossible and counterproductive. It means undertaking the urgent, often thankless work of retrofitting the structure to match the new reality. This adjustment work is rarely glamorous. It happens in budget meetings, in logistics software, in renegotiated vendor contracts, in expanded communications staff, in upgraded travel arrangements. It shows up in how expectations are calibrated for players suddenly facing a media scrum 82 games strong, for coaches asked to be not just tacticians but statesmen, for owners balancing short-term cash infusions with long-term brand equity. It shows up in how exposure is shared in the delicate dance of showcasing a generational draw while ensuring the league's competitive tapestry and veteran stars remain vividly part of the story. It shows up in how pressure is absorbed internally within the league office, rather than being deflected outward in a reactive, defensive posture. This is the stretch where the mettle of leadership is truly tested, not in the dramatic, clear-cut emergencies, but in the slow, grinding pressure cooker of transition. Transitions are the crucibles that determine whether explosive growth consolidates into something sustainable, durable, and equitable, or whether it spirals into fragmentation, resentment, and wasted potential. The pressure of this new era doesn't primarily manifest where the cameras are not in the packed arenas or on the glossy graphics of record-breaking broadcasts. It manifests in the invisible, operational plumbing of the league. It shows up in the scheduling department, now tasked with balancing competitive fairness, player rest, and the commercial imperative of maximizing national exposure for the most compelling matchups. It shows up in airport lounges and hotel lobbies, where a travel schedule designed for a more modest level of fatigue is now being run by athletes under a vastly more intense physical and mental microscope. It shows up in the negotiations for everything from charter flight availability to practice facility hours. Negotiations that suddenly carry a weight and urgency they never possessed before. When a league grows faster than its operational and systemic skeleton, alignment ceases to be an aspirational goal and becomes an existential necessity. Every department, from basketball operations to marketing, from communications to digital media, finds that its decisions are suddenly interconnected and highly consequential. Everything feels urgent. And urgency, as any leader knows, changes the tenor of every conversation. It shortens fuses, elevates stakes, and turns routine compromises into high-stakes decisions. It is within this context of systemic stress that the league's current collective bargaining agreement, CBA, negotiations take on their fullest meaning. They should not be viewed merely as a potential source of labor, drama, or contract year conflict. They are, first and foremost, a signal, one of the clearest signals possible, that the ground has shifted beneath the league's feet. When economic growth outpaces the existing economic framework, labor discussions are not a sign of failure. They are a mathematical inevitability. The previous CBA was negotiated in a different world, with different assumptions about revenue, ceilings, media value, and the pace of expansion. That world no longer exists. Visibility is higher. Revenue projections, from ticket sales to media rights to merchandise, are being revised upward. The timeline for profitability and significant player compensation increases has tightened from a distant maybe to an imminent how. Thus, the CBA talks are not a meltdown. They are a necessary reset. Resets occur when a league outgrows the very assumptions it was built upon. It is worth noting a stark truth. Leagues that don't matter never have to renegotiate their future with this level of public intensity. Leagues that don't grow never feel the acute pressure of balancing the competing, legitimate interests of ownership seeking return on investment and players seeking a fair share of a booming market. The simple fact that these negotiations are happening under this bright a spotlight, with this much tangible evidence of increased value on the table, says everything about the WNBA's new station. The league has graduated to a tier of relevance, where these tensions are not just internal matters, but front-page sports business news. This doesn't automatically make the negotiation process smooth or easy. Such discussions never are. but it makes them profoundly meaningful. They are the concrete manifestation of the growth everyone sought. How this moment is handled with transparency, creativity, and a shared sense of purpose, or with rigidity and short-term thinking, will echo far beyond the terms of a single agreement. It will set a tone for the next decade. The real risk for the WNBA at this juncture is not the presence of disagreement. Healthy conflict is a sign of life and high stakes. The real insidious risk is in pretending that nothing fundamental has changed, acting as if the explosive growth of the last 18 months hasn't radically altered the financial and cultural equation is how profound misalignment begins. That is how trust between players and the league erodes. That is how the once-in-a-generation opportunity to lock in a vastly expanded fan base can slip away. Growth does not reward patience first. It demands, above all else, honesty, a clear-eyed assessment of the new reality, and the courage to build anew upon it. The next phase of the WNBA will not be announced with a single, triumphal press conference or a breaking news banner. It will not arrive with a grand, ceremonial unveiling. Its construction will be quiet, granular, and often unsung. It will show up in the resetting of internal expectations, where a good media day is redefined from adequate local coverage to a polished major league event. It will show up in more intentional, strategic decisions about everything from all-star game formats to playoff seeding, decisions made with the confidence of a league that knows it is being watched closely rather than the hesitancy of one hoping to be seen. It will show up in league leadership consistently choosing clarity, even when that clarity is difficult or exposes challenges over the temporary comfort of ambiguity or silence. This is how genuine eras are built. Not through a collection of viral moments and record-breaking nights, though those provide the fuel. They are built through the hard, daily work of alignment of vision, of resources, of priorities, of message over time. The WNBA did not wander into this position by accident or by luck. It earned its relevance through 28 years of perseverance, through the breathtaking skill of its athletes, through the loyalty of its fans. It earned this attention, and now it has earned the accompanying responsibility. That is the inescapable corollary. That part, the weight of expectation, the demand for consistency, the burden of stewardship, can no longer be deferred, wished away, or avoided. The childhood of hoping for attention is over. The adulthood of managing it has begun. Wanting growth is easy. It is a dream. Living with growth, thriving within it, and channeling its chaotic energy into a stable, flourishing institution that is the real, brutal, and glorious challenge. Knowing how to manage what you finally, miraculously received is where leagues separate themselves. It is where legacies are forged. The league now faces a defining tension, the clash between momentum and control. Momentum is a force of nature. It is organic, driven by fans, by stars, by cultural currents. It moves with its own logic and speed. Control, in contrast, is a force of architecture. It must be painstakingly designed, built, and maintained. It is about systems, protocols, and strategic direction. Right now, the WNBA has momentum in historic, overflowing abundance. But control, the administrative, operational, and strategic control necessary to harness that momentum for the long term, is still playing catch-up. This gap is the space where outside noise grows deafening. In this gap, every administrative move is parsed as a symbolic message. Every pause for consideration is interpreted as hesitation or dysfunction. Every routine growing pain, a player's adjustment struggle, a coach's tactical error, a broadcast glitch is inflated from an incident into a statement on the state of the league. This atmospheric pressure is not fair, but it is the new reality. The league office and team executives are no longer merely managing basketball games and team operations. They are now simultaneously managing global perception, navigating delicate timing on 100 fronts, and tending to the fragile commodity of trust with players, with partners, with fans. These complex, interlocking layers of management simply did not exist at this scale or intensity before. They weren't required. Growth has irrevocably changed the job description. Leadership in this environment stops being primarily about maintenance, keeping the lights on and the games running. It transforms into being about direction. It is about filtering the cacophony of voices, understanding which ones represent genuine stakeholder concerns versus fleeting noise, and charting a course that is proactive rather than reactive. It is about having a plan for the next phase, not just a reaction to the last headline. Concurrent with this institutional pressure is the evolution of the fan base itself. A growing, invested audience does not just cheer. It observes. It tracks patterns. It compares decisions made in May to those made in August, looking for consistency. It notices disparities in promotion, in resource allocation, in the application of rules, disparities that would have passed unnoticed in a quieter time. This is what happens when casual, supportive interest deepens into daily, invested fandom. With that deeper investment comes a higher, more nuanced set of expectations. The demand is not for perfection. Sports fans understand chaos is part of the game. The demand is for coherence, for logic. Fans want to understand the why behind decisions. When the league's explanations are absent, delayed, or perceived as insufficient, frustration quickly fills the vacuum. This shift should not be misread as fan negativity or disloyalty. It is, paradoxically, a sign of profound belief and maturation. Questioning is an act of engagement. It means the audience cares enough to pay close attention and hold the institution to the standards it now claims to inhabit. The true test for the league in this communication age is whether it meets this rightful curiosity with transparency and timely communication, or whether it retreats behind a wall of institutional silence, hoping the questions will go away. Silence was once a viable strategy. In a smaller ecosystem, it could be attributed to a lack of resources or a focused dedication to the game itself. In the glaring light of relevance, silence is no longer neutral. It becomes a canvas onto which anxieties, suspicions, and negative narratives are enthusiastically projected. What used to pass as dignified restraint now risks being perceived as evasion or indecision. Every major league reaches an inflection point where it can no longer operate on a foundation of accumulated goodwill alone. The pioneers and early adopters remain, their passion undimmed, but now they are joined by a much wider, more mainstream crowd. This new audience did not come of age with the league's struggles. They arrive with the expectations formed by decades of consuming other major professional sports. They do not fill in informational gaps with historical loyalty. They fill them with contemporary expectations derived from other elite products. In this environment, consistency becomes the fundamental currency of trust. Clear standards, clearly communicated. A coherent messaging framework that explains priorities. Transparency about challenges, not just celebrations of successes. This is not required because critics are loud. It is required because the scale and maturity of the enterprise demand it for its own health and sustainability. The task before the WNBA is not to reinvent its soul. It is to reinforce and showcase the compelling product it has always been: a league of unparalleled competitive balance, profound athleticism, and compelling personalities, while simultaneously adapting its structures and communications to the scale of what it is becoming. This balancing act is incredibly difficult. It requires acknowledging growing pains without being defined by them, celebrating superstars while elevating the collective, and honoring history while embracing a transformative future. Perhaps the most challenging aspect of this phase is that perception begins to move at the speed of light, while reality, the slow, complex work of organizational change, moves at the speed of human deliberation and implementation. Narratives solidify in the public mind long before institutions can possibly formulate and execute comprehensive responses. People in the digital era do not wait for all the facts. They engage in sense-making, deciding what an event or trend means almost instantaneously. A single interaction, a clipped video without context, a travel delay, can become emblematic of a larger problem within hours. This is the high cost of visibility. The league is no longer being watched solely for the basketball it produces. It is being watched for what people believe it represents about women's sports, about equity, about generational change, about business savvy. Every decision, therefore, gets layered with symbolic meaning it may never have been intended to carry. A scheduling choice becomes a statement on competitive balance. A promotional asset becomes a declaration of who the league values. A comment from an executive becomes a manifesto, even when the intent is purely practical. Even when the move is a simple logistical necessity, it is interpreted through a prism of heightened significance. This is where strategic communication becomes not an ancillary function, but a core operational discipline, as critical as setting the schedule or negotiating contracts. The goal is not to control every opinion, an impossible task. The goal is to ensure that the league's own voice, its own framing of its journey and its challenges, is in the arena competing with the assumptions, to prevent a vacuum of information that inevitably gets filled with speculation and often cynical narrative. The central challenge for the WNBA is no longer about avoiding criticism. That battle was lost the moment it became truly relevant. Criticism is the price of entry in the major league arena. The challenge now is to proactively set the narrative frame to explain the complexities of this transition, to articulate the long-term vision, and to do so with enough clarity and regularity that the inevitable growing pains are understood as part of a difficult but managed process, rather than being misread as evidence of fundamental chaos or bias. Structure and strategy must be made visible, not just internally present. Relevance changes the very definition of the scoreboard. Success is no longer measured solely by tangible metrics like expansion franchises or year-over-year revenue jumps. It is increasingly measured in the intangible currencies of trust earned, consistency demonstrated, and the ability to navigate this whitewater period without losing control of the core story of progress. This moment, in the end, is not about a single season of record attendance. It is not solely about one transcendent rookie, as impactful as she is. It is not about any single headline or social media controversy. It is about a professional sports league standing squarely in front of the reality it spent nearly 3 decades tirelessly chasing. The attention did not arrive by accident. The relevance was not a charitable gift. They were earned by every player who suited up for a 42-game grind in front of sparse crowds, earned by every executive who fought for airtime and sponsorship dollars, earned by every fan who wore a jersey and argued for the league's legitimacy. The groundwork was laid, brick by brick, long before the spotlight reached its current blinding wattage. But relevance, once attained, changes the rules of engagement entirely. The WNBA no longer gets to operate like a league that is still asking for a seat at the table. It must now conduct itself like a league that has not only earned its place, but is responsible for helping set the table for the future. This means its decisions carry more consequence. Its silences are interpreted as positions. Its timing when it speaks, when it acts, when it invests, becomes an intrinsic part of its message, whether consciously intended or not. This critical phase of growth is not inherently loud or dramatic. Its most important work doesn't happen on hardwood. It happens in conference rooms and on Zoom calls. It is shaped in the quiet spaces where the public cannot see, in the thoroughness of strategic planning, in the fairness of internal negotiations, in the wisdom of resource allocation, in the fortitude of leaders facing problems with no perfect, painless solutions. Growth, by its nature, exposes every weakness in a system. It does not do this to embarrass, but to demand evolution. It stresses systems to their breaking point so they can be rebuilt stronger. What happens next for the WNBA will not be decided by the loudest voice on social media or the hottest take on a debate show. It will be decided in those unseen rooms. It will be decided by whether league leadership consistently chooses the clarifying light of honesty over the fleeting comfort of obfuscation, by whether a genuine, durable alignment between owners, the league office, and players is intentionally constructed through shared purpose rather than assumed or imposed, by whether the profound responsibility that accompanies this hard-won relevance is fully embraced as the mandate of a new era or is quietly resisted as an inconvenient burden. Every great sports league reaches a precipice where the belief of its followers matures into the expectation of its stakeholders. That is the line the WNBA has now decisively crossed. There is no path back to being overlooked, to being a well-kept secret, to operating below the radar, that door is closed. There is only the path forward, a path that must now be walked with the purpose, poise, and professionalism that this remarkable moment and the people who built it so richly deserve. The story is still being written. The next chapters will be defined not by the explosion of attention, but by what was built in its lasting light.